Week 14 of the National Football League is in the books, and if you're a Ravens fan, you just watch yourself a thriller. One of the greatest games of all time, an ending for the ages. Welcome to the Ravens Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel Njoku. The Ravens win 37-31 in overtime. Punt return by Tylan Wallace for a touchdown, taking the league by storm. What a game. What a game. I thought it was going to be a little bit of a shorter, a smaller, I would say, deficit. I thought that the Ravens would put up less points and the Rams as well, but nope. Old-fashioned shootout. The rest of the National Football League waited with bated breath as all the other division leaders in the AFC lost. The Chiefs lost. The Jaguars lost to the Browns. It's anyone's game right now in the AFC. Unless you're looking to take the top seed. The Ravens look like they may be getting that locked up. This episode, we'll talk all about that big game against the Rams. We'll look ahead to the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll have our guy, Ken Zalis, our fantasy guru, come and talk about the Ravens. And if you're a fantasy footballer who made the playoffs, what you might have to do to go ahead and get that win and cash that big check for your dues in your fantasy league. But first, what a win. Nerve-wracking. Just the type of game that you love to see if you're a Ravens fan, because the notion has been the Ravens can't close out games. The Ravens can't hold fourth quarter leads, but not so much. Of course, the Ravens did give up a lead. They scored late in the game, and the defense let Matthew Stafford come in and tie the game with a masterful drive that ended in a field goal to send the game to overtime. But the Ravens are resilient. And I know some fans have been thinking, there's a chance the Rams could have won, all things considered. And that's true to some extent, but what I saw was a football team that was clearly better than the Rams. Clearly better than the Rams in all facets. It's just that the Rams had that can't give attitude, can't give up attitude. So shout out to the Rams. They played a masterful game. Love what Matthew Stafford did. Pretty much everything I said came true last week. I told you. Kyron Williams was going to come in and set the tone, and if they were successful in that, Sean McVay obviously saw some things in the Ravens defense that he believed he could take advantage of. The team became two-dimensional, play-action passes for Matthew Stafford. I mean, in my regard, I think that the Rams kind of got away from the run a little bit. I think that, especially in the beginning of the game, they were pounding the Ravens with runs, and they could have really set the tone in that game by really enforcing the run and making the Ravens find a way to stop it. Now, can't really knock the Rams because they put up 31 points on what I believe to be the best defense in the National Football League. So shout out to them. But exactly what I thought was going to happen as far as the Ravens being unable to stop the run game, it's going to be a problem moving forward, I think. Now, add on that Kyle Hamilton suffered a grade 1 MCL. Ravens fans were waiting with bated breath as news of his injury came out. Many thought that it could have been more serious, but thankfully for the Ravens and the fans, it looks like Kyle Hamilton will be okay, and they should expect him at the latest, the beginning of the postseason. But we move on because we have to talk about the way Ravens are being portrayed by the national media. I say this almost every other week, but it's just so weird. Even after that game, the goalposts seems to be shifting. Pundits don't trust the Ravens. I don't think they will until the Ravens win the Super Bowl. I think it has to do with the fact that the Ravens have only won one playoff game in a decade, which just hearing that out loud sounds ludicrous. The Ravens are one of the best teams in the league and have been for quite some time, and the fact that they've only won one in 10 years is a little baffling. But I think that has to do more with why analysts and pundits aren't really trusting the Ravens right now. People are asking themselves, who's the best team in the AFC? It's clearly the Ravens. It's clearly the Ravens. They have 10 wins and 3 losses. And those 3 losses were by 7 points, 3 points, and 2 points. So, and many will say the Ravens should be undefeated. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, obviously, but this team is great on all facets, offense, defense. And we saw it on Sunday, special teams. Don't sleep on the Ravens. I don't know how you can at this point, considering they're the sole possessors of the number 1 seed in the AFC after the Dolphins lose to the Titans. Who's the darling, if not the Ravens? The Chiefs don't seem like the same team. They lost to the Bills, and a lot of hoopla about the offsides on the offensive player, Kadarius Toney. He was offsides. So the Chiefs have some work cut out for them. On defense, they don't look to be that great. They look good, but they don't look that great. The offense is looking pedestrian. Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and that's it. Some may say that might be enough, and valid, obviously, but Chiefs don't look like they're the team to beat in the AFC. Dolphins, soft. Explosive, soft. Jaguars, up and down. You want to talk about a team you can't trust? The Jaguars. Young team, up and down. Don't know what you're going to get with them. Sure, go with the Jaguars. Texans lose out on C.J. Stroud. You have the Colts. Gardner Minshew. Browns have Joe Flacco. If there's a team that I consider to be potentially dangerous, it's them, but they're ho-hum sometimes. Bengals, Steelers. I mean, look at all these teams I'm naming out. So many deficiencies. And then you have the Ravens. Clearly the best team in the AFC. Probably the best team in all of the NFL. Probably, maybe. There's a team in the West Coast that may have something to say about that. But AFC for sure. No question. Ravens. 100%. Now, we can't talk about the Ravens unless we're talking about Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar Jackson had one of those masterful performances. I wrote about it in one of my pieces on Bet Maryland that Lamar Jackson only needs 1 or 2 MVP caliber games to put himself in the conversation. And this was that game. This was that game. I mean, he was the entire offense. He looked great. Now, his completion percentage was, in the 50s, and some may say that, he wasn't as sharp as he needed to be. But remember, the weather plays a factor. No Mark Andrews. No safety blanket. You got young guys like Isaiah Likely and, Charlie Kolar, and you got new guys like OBJ trying to get his head in the game. Zay Flowers is the rookie. So, a lot of moving pieces. But one thing I will say about Lamar, he is getting the ball to different receivers. You want to hold out on one guy? He will make you pay. And if you think you're going to catch him in the backfield with blitzes, his agility, his ability to sense pressure has increased exponentially from the beginning of the season. So Lamar is firmly in the MVP conversation. I think Dak Prescott is obviously the front runner. I think he deserves the award as of today, if I'm being quite honest. Brock Purdy is playing a great, great season with the San Francisco 49ers. And then right there, Lamar. I think there should be any conversation, no debate regarding that for sure. So big ups to Lamar Jackson. Great game by him. Zay Flowers reaches the end zone and then gets the 2-point conversion immediately afterwards. They call it the octopus in the media. Great job by him. So he's starting to take shape. And Odell Beckham Jr., I mean, let's take a second to process what has happened. I mean, we talked about it when Mark Andrews went down. Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman, if he can get his act together, and Zay Flowers are going to be prominent. But I thought that Odell Beckham would be the one to benefit the most. And I believe NFL chick Rita Hubbard agreed with me on that sentiment a couple of weeks back. So he's balling out of control. Let's be honest. Now, he mentioned on that touchdown grab that he ran the wrong route, but he caught the touchdown anyway. I mean, his ability to adjust on the fly, I mean, a lot of that will need to come into play with these receivers as Lamar Jackson escapes pressure at times and has to make something happen out of nothing, and receivers have to be able to adapt. That wasn't the case on that touchdown grab, but I'm just saying his ability to adapt to that ball and come up with it is huge. So defenses are going to start to key in on Odell Beckham, and that's what's going to make things way easier for Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, who has been receiving some flack from fans because it seems as though he's taken, being a little lazy out there in those run routes. That interception thrown by Lamar Jackson, some believe that Rashad had a chance to, at least at the minimum, break it up. Again, we talked about it a couple of months ago. I think fans need to just give him some grace. He hasn't played his best. I admit he hasn't really popped up on the tape for me to say that he's improved as a route runner, but this is an evolving offense. Remember, this is just the first installation of what I believe will be a huge Todd Monken overhaul as the years progress. So I think Rashad Bateman will get his act together eventually. You got a guy like Odell Beckham who pretty much demands attention. Zay Flowers who's popping up. Not a lot of room for Rashad Bateman to get the touches and attentions that he may think that he deserves. But one knock I will say about Bateman is I'm sure he's taking plays off because mentally you're thinking, the ball's not coming my way, so I don't have to go full energy. But as a professional, you need to be able to attack the ball at any given moment, be ready for the ball because you never know when it comes your way. And it seemed like he wasn't prepared for the ball to come his way in that situation, and it cost Ravens a turnover. Of course, that might not be the case. That's just my Monday morning quarterback spiel based on what I saw immediately as the game was going on. But that's it. We're not going to dog the offense too much because they did score 37, including that huge punt return from Tylan Wallace. Congrats to him. From what I've heard, he seems to be an upstanding young gentleman. So very, very, very excited for him. And we've been thinking about it. When they drafted him, I think that Tylan Wallace has the potential now to become not only a part of the special teams, but a part of this offense. Devin Duvernay was sent an IR this week, so he's out for the season. They expect him back for the postseason, but these next 4 games, this gauntlet, it's going to be all hands on deck, and we're going to need players like that from Wallace for the Ravens to secure that AFC 1 seed and that first round bye. Before we move on to the other matters, we need to talk about John Harbaugh. I know he's been the conversation starter. He's been a polarizing figure. I think y'all know where I'm going at. That flag he threw on that score, when everybody and their mama, heck, I think my 1-year-old daughter might have known that all challenges, all reviews for scores are reviewed by the refs. No need to toss the flag. They're going to review it. And they don't see anything, the play will stand as called. But John Harbaugh threw the flag anyway. When they were attempting to defend the 2-point conversion, John Harbaugh after the game said that he did it on purpose. He was trying to give his team extra time to figure out that defense, which is obviously BS. I mean, you guys know it's BS, right? I know it's BS, but it's funny that he said it. Obviously, the outcome of the game doesn't change. The Ravens didn't win, so he's off the hook. But, man, he's been the coach since 2008, still making decisions like that. I would have been way more excited and happy if he just said, yeah, in the heat of the moment, I messed up. And his reasoning for throwing the flag was weird. He thought that the receiver stepped out of bounds. The receiver was nowhere near the out-of-bounds marker. I mean, I don't know. It's so ludicrous that I might even believe what he said when he said he wanted to give his team more time. But just call a timeout, right? Why throw the flag? The extra few seconds of confusion will give the defense enough time to figure it out, I guess. I don't know. But it was very interesting. I thought I'd bring it up because we talk Ravens here. When we come back, we'll have the Ravens Talk mailbox. I'll answer a few questions that the fans have, and then we'll move on to Ken Zalis. He'll join us all about the upcoming game against the Jacksonville Jaguars on the Ravens Talk podcast. Welcome back to the Ravens Talk podcast. As you mentioned, it's time for our awesome Ravens Talk mailbox. I love this because I get to hear from the fans, get to know where their head's at after a victory or a loss. In this case, a victory, huge win. We'll answer a few questions. I got a lot of questions here. This seems to be pretty popular, so I'll answer one or two as we are short on time. But first question here is, do you think the Marlon Humphrey backlash is overblown? This is from Gage. And for those who don't know, Marlon Humphrey didn't have the best game on Sunday. Cooper Kupp pretty much had his way with him. Do I think it's overblown? Absolutely. Marlon Humphrey is a professional until I see differently in his technique or how he approaches the game. Well, Marlon's going to be fine. He just got back from an injury. It was the bye week. It was sluggish out there, raining. He slipped a couple of times. I mean, you guys saw. And the knock on Cooper Kupp, I mean, this is more like disrespect towards Cooper Kupp, who I think is still a top 5 receiver in the game. His route running ability is still pretty solid. So until I see Humphrey struggle for longer periods of time, I'm not willing to look at this as more than just a bad game from his part. Let's see. Next question. Do you think the Ravens will actually show up to the Niners game? Now, this is until next week. I won't even bother with it. I'll say for now, let's wait and see on that. I won't answer that till next week, but I think that the Ravens and Niners are eerily similar, very close. So we'll talk about that next week. I can't wait for that game. More San Francisco. You guys better not be sleeping on the Jaguars now. A lot of 49ers questions here. Let's see. Zay Flowers, question mark, from my boy Trey King. Zay Flowers is balling out. We mentioned that last week. Someone asked, is Zay Flowers going to be able to reach the end zone? Now you're starting to see, like I said, no Mark Andrews. Someone needs to catch the ball. And who better than Zay Flowers, who has really exploded as one of the top rookie receivers in the game. So big shout outs to Zay Flowers. Best team in NFL, close to it. I mentioned it. They're very close. They're either 1 or 2. I haven't looked at the San Francisco film on purpose. As you can probably tell, I'm looking much forward to that game. I think those are going to be, those are my picks. If you were here in August, Ravens versus 49ers Super Bowl. So I'm doing my due diligence and not looking at the film yet. But from what I've seen from highlights and a game or two that I'll be able to catch in prime time, the 49ers look really good. But the Ravens are right up there with them, 1 and 2. You take your pick where you want to put them. I'm sure Ravens fans want to be number 1, but we'll see next week. Between Madubuike, I always call him Madubuike, Stone, and PQ, who do you think is the odd man out? Madubuike's gone. Madubuike's gone. Interior pass rusher, those are hot commodities in the National Football League. So I don't expect them to be back. I expect maybe either Stone or PQ. Both? That's tough. If I had to pick between the two, I'd say Stone stays, but I think PQ might also be gone. But between those 3, I think for sure Madubuike is going to be the one that, unfortunately, is left out to dry and get a huge payday. You know, big out to dry, right? Having that guy get multi-millions of dollars. So I think he's going to be, unfortunately, no longer a Raven after 2023. Let's have one more question here. How do we change to win versus the 49ers, and Dolphins? Sunday's performance won't do. From RJD. I think you need to slow your roll a little bit now. I think I like their chances against the Jags. We'll talk about it with Ken Zalis when he comes in. I won't touch on the 49ers, but I will touch on the Dolphins. I think what we saw from the Dolphins is really much what they are. They're an explosive team. The Dolphins are explosive, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Ravens lose just because the Dolphins have that ability to score in any given possession. However, team for team, player for player, the Ravens are, in my opinion, a better football team than the Miami Dolphins. All right, great questions. I skipped a lot of them. Some of them were the same. I think I saw a few Marlon Humphrey questions we had to touch on and a lot of 49ers questions because I think Ravens fans are starting to see that top AFC, top NFC button heads on Christmas Day could be fun. I think it's going to be a great time. We'll talk about that next week, but when we come back, we'll have Ken Zalis join us, talk all about fantasy football and also about that huge game coming against the Jaguars. The Jaguars need to beat the Ravens to keep pace, and the Ravens really need one win outside of that Dolphins game, which is also a must-win game in order to secure that 1 seed. So big game coming up against the Jaguars on Sunday Night Football. We'll talk all about it next on the Ravens Talk Podcast. Welcome back to the Ravens Talk Podcast. We have with us a returning guest, Ken Zalis. Welcome back to the podcast, man. Sorry.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. Yes. How's everything going?
Everything's going good right now, especially if you're a Ravens fan. The Ravens just had a huge win in overtime. Tylan Wallace just ran back for a touchdown after a punt return. It all seemed kind of shaky, especially after the Ravens were unable to score on the opening possession in OT. Give us your thoughts about how you think the game went and if there are any concerns or things that you saw that you really liked.
Well, I mean, look, they won the game, and as we saw around the NFL, a lot of the teams that they were vying for the top seed with lost their games in all kinds of crazy ways. If you saw how Miami lost up 14 with a little over 3 minutes left, and they lose their game, and when we last talked, the division, we didn't know what was happening in the division, and Pittsburgh is falling on the hard time. Cincinnati lost their quarterback, Cleveland lost their quarterback, and they have a familiar face leading them back into the charge, and Kansas City and Buffalo aren't what they were. So they're 10-3, and they just won a game against a team in the Rams that had come in as one of the hottest teams in the NFL. So however they won it, kudos to the Ravens. I mean, they're finding different ways to win. But within the game, it was like 3 different games. It was like kind of crazy. It's like, you see the weather, and you think they're going to run the ball, and they got Gus, who couldn't, had the bus had a flat on Sunday, couldn't get anything going, and so they were throwing the ball all over the place, and it worked early. A couple of broken defensive lapses by the Rams led to long scoring, with Odell and with Likely, and then I think they fell in love with the pass a little too much and got away from the run. And then you had some curious coaching decisions. End of the first half, not calling a timeout with 28 seconds left inside the 20, seemingly settling for the field goal, and then calling the timeout with 12 seconds left to kick the field goal instead of taking it down to 3 seconds to end the half. Not going for it on 4th and inches all of a sudden, playing a little bit scared because the defense wasn't the normal defense that we've been accustomed to the Ravens playing. And then, they do some great things in the fourth quarter, take a lead, and the defense had played really, really well in the second half. Basically, limiting the Rams to 2 points on a crazy play where Lamar isn't ready for the snap, and there's a communication error. But you feel good because the Ravens haven't let up anything. And then with a minute left, we've seen this story before. Here come the Rams down and get in the field goal range and send it to overtime. And then, overtime, 3 and out for both teams. And Wallace makes that, just breaks 6 tackles and makes a play, and couldn't be happier for him. I mean, he's a guy that, when they drafted him, I was thrilled about it because, he unfortunately got hurt at the end of his college career that allowed him to fall into the 4th round, probably a 2nd round pick coming into the draft before the injury, and didn't even know if he was going to make the team. And, didn't even know if he was going to play that game. Duvernay unfortunately hurts his back. Looks like he's headed to IR, and, what they say, next man up, and next man up made a play, and, all's good in Ravens land. So it was such a weird game because there were so many ins and outs, ups and downs, within the game. It seemed like it was 4 different games within one game, but, kind of survive in advance, and 10-3 is 10-3. You are what your record says you are.
Yeah, and no other team in the conference has a better record than 10-3. And you mentioned it. You mentioned that there's ebb and flows in the game, and I'm usually pretty good at catching on how the game is going to go based on the opening possession and just the first quarter. I'm just like, okay, that's what their game plan is, and the game plan shifted one way or another over and over again. There was no running on a rainy day, like you mentioned, and it made for good football. It made for good television for sure, but definitely a curious decision on both ends. Both the Rams and the Ravens definitely made some curious decisions in that game, but it was fun to watch, and luckily for Ravens fans, they pick up the W.
Yeah, it was entertaining. I mean, look, the Rams opened the game 9 straight runs. And they went down to the 6. They were running. And if you say, what's your concern? It's been a concern. The Ravens' run defense hasn't been great. Yeah. They've been lit up by many teams this year that have been able to run the ball. And then, sometimes our coach can't get out of his way sometimes. And obviously McVay couldn't get out of his way. I get that you have 2 of the better wide receivers. I mean, Kupp is what he is, and he's been the best wide receiver in the game, over the last 3-4 years. And Puka's just, I mean, if CJ Stroud isn't the rookie of the year, Puka's rookie of the year. I mean,
1,000%.
my God, is he good?
Yeah.
And to get to watch him up close and personal, I mean, he's really good. And for them to have Puka and Cooper Kupp, I get it why you want to throw the ball. Somebody tapped the coach on the shoulder. You realize you just ran the ball from the 25 to the 6.
Right.
Like, you didn't throw the ball once. And then you throw 3 straight times and it leads to a field goal. And that, momentum's a funny thing. That's a big momentum swing, 7 versus 3 right there. Like you're thinking like, oh my God, they're just going to run the ball down the Ravens' throats all game. And then they stopped. And, it's a good thing and a bad thing because, like I said, they have 2 of the better wide receivers in the game and they have a Super Bowl winning quarterback. But, both coaches kind of got in their own way. Whatever you want to believe from Coach Harbaugh at the end of the game with the flag and whatever. I wish coaches sometimes just say, you know what, I screwed up.
I literally
would
just said
respect
that.
it more. I would respect it more if you just said screw up. Don't give me the who struck John that, I knew the rule, but I thought I could get more time. Just stop. You messed up. You said we can all read lips too.
Right.
I mean, we see the video. you said you messed up. Just say it.
Yeah.
Just say it. It's okay. I mean, it's funny. You're a Hall of Fame. I'm not, even though I'm not a big fan, you're a Hall of Fame coach. I mean, your job's secure. You're allowed a mistake.
Right.
You made a mistake. It's okay. You moved on, and at the end of the day, we can laugh about the mistake because you won the game.
He's a Harbaugh. He doesn't like to be laughed
you
at.
had to hardball it up, and hey, yeah. But again, you look around the league, and other teams lost those games. Kansas City lost that game. That was a crazy game. Right. Miami lost that game somehow last night, and it's just you give credit where credit's due. The Ravens won that game, and that's sometimes you have to win a game where your number 1 ranked defense doesn't have its best day. Yeah. Marlon didn't have his best day coming back. Is that because he's a little bit rusty, because he's, still dealing with a little bit of an injury? But, guys made plays, when they needed to. And it's kudos to the organization and kudos to the coaching staff at the end of the day of having guys that, next man up and ready to go and are willing to make a play.
Yeah, now you're right. I was just thinking about that. There were some fans who have been really mouthy about Marlon Humphrey's performance against Cooper Kupp. And I'm thinking Cooper Kupp is a great receiver sometimes, and he just came back from injury. Just give him some grace.
I mean, look, is that a communication thing? Is that just, the offense has the advantage on a wet day like that? Where you're going. He was a couple of times he was in man and
slipping.
Near the end of the game, it looked like they were picking on him a little bit because they kept on going in his direction. Even not when Kupp was there, when Robinson was there, and things like that, and stuff. So it's fine. I mean, look, we know what Marlon is, and we know how important he is to the overall defense and things like that. So we do things on the little post game show that I do with Pressbox, and we put things on the watch list. Yeah. Is it a concern? Is it where is it? I mean, it's worth watching. Let's see how he bounces back against Jacksonville, who again. You talked about that a little bit. That's the next game up, and they just lost one of their top receivers in Kirk, so they're not as strong as they were. They have a quarterback that's a little bit hobbled, but Ridley is, he's a top receiver in this league. He has, who's had his moments this year. Zay Jones can play. They have a running back that can give you some trouble out of the backfield in ETN. So, the defense is going to have to bounce back, but if 1 or 2 times out of every 14 games, the defense is going to be off, let's be happy that it was in the regular season. It's not in the playoffs. and go from there. Because, again, I think when we have expectations that the Ravens are going to win the game coming in, and it's not the exact game that we thought we were going to get, sometimes those guys get paid, as we say, on the other side of the ball.
Exactly.
The Rams have won 3 straight, and convincingly, against good football teams. So
Mm-hmm.
they're a good football team. I thought the Ravens did an excellent job, game planning for Aaron Donald.
Oh yeah.
They didn't let him be as disruptive, and by any means necessary, right? I mean, if it takes 3 guys, it takes 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and sometimes that's what they have. And it wasn't just 3 guys, like as in you're chipping them with a tight end or a running back. It was 3 offensive linemen that were sometimes making sure he didn't get his hands on the quarterback, and they're going to face some challenges, over the next couple games with some guys that can rush the passer, and Jacksonville has some of those guys, and and obviously San Francisco has one of the best in the league. You look a little bit ahead, and Pittsburgh has one of those guys, and they're going to have to make sure that the top pass rushers aren't disruption to the offense, and allow them to continue to score in the 30s.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about the Ravens' difficulties with premier pass rushers, especially at the edge. Now we enter Jacksonville. They have some pass rushers. Do you see the Ravens doing what they did against Aaron Donald? Even though I know Aaron Donald's more of an interior guy, do you see the Ravens having a game plan for those pass rushers? Because that, I believe, may be the deciding factor in that game against Jacksonville.
I'm gonna say yes, because I think they've learned their lesson.
Mm-hmm.
They've premier pass rushers have eaten them up a little bit. I think going back to the Cleveland game, it's like, I kept on waiting for somebody, a tight end, Ricard, to be over there. I kept on waiting for help, and God bless Justice Hill, but that wasn't the type of help that I was talking about. And the one thing about the Rams game, when you look at it again, towards the end of the game, Aaron Donald went outside.
Mm-hmm.
And they were still making sure that he wasn't a disruptor.
Right.
And they were still double teaming him with 2 offensive linemen. So, Linderbaum made a mistake, but Linderbaum's also in charge of calling out the who's blocking who in the alignment. He did a masterful job.
Yeah.
I thought Lamar did a really good job of getting in and out of plays and moving the protection when he needed to. So I'm hoping that they've learned their lesson, that they can't let one premier player disrupt an entire offense. So yes, I like the way they used Ricard. I like the way that they gave Stanley a couple of plays off and brought McCary in. I never heard anything about an injury, so it looked like it was planned to me that every third series they would give McCary a couple of snaps and keep Stanley fresh for the end of the game. So I like that, and to me, things like that show growth of some of the problems that they had earlier in the year, and I'm looking for that to continue, especially over these next 2 weeks, where they have some disruptors on both Jacksonville and the 49ers.
Yeah, and that's my big concern moving forward. I won't touch on the 49ers game too much because I haven't looked at the film yet, and I'm really excited to do so after that Jaguars game. But yeah, you're right.
Don't look at the film. Don't look at the film. They're good, dude.
Yeah, man, I can't wait. It's going to be exciting. But
that's going to be fun.
Kyle Hamilton went down. You saw the defense. I think a case can be made that the defense changed a little bit with his absence, and that's to be expected because he's all over the field at any given moment. How do you think the Ravens should move forward with his injury? Do you expect them to hold him out from this Jaguars game? And if moving forward he's more healthier, maybe holding him out from the 49ers game too, maybe same for the Dolphins? Or what are your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, if he could go, let's go. I mean, I don't. If we're trying to guess which game is more important, the next game is the most important game.
Okay, that's fair.
So if he could go there, if he can go against Jacksonville, it'd be great. I mean, I actually, I like Marlon inside now.
Yeah.
So if Hamilton's out, and he's been that inside guy and that kind of everywhere, one of the things you have to shore up is the inside. And Marlon's played really well there. And this is not a knock on him. This happens to all premier corners. And, sometimes they go to safety and maybe use, Marlon is more of a safety / nickel cornerish type guy,
Right.
where he's going to be on the field 90% of the time. But maybe that's the best place for him if Hamilton needs to miss any time. Stone's been great. Marcus Williams, I know a lot of people are down on him a little bit, but he's still he can say all he wants. He's 100%. He's not going to be 100% the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
That's an injury that needs surgery, and he's going to have it in the offseason. And God bless him for toughening it out and missing and coming back without the surgery. But hopefully after the Super Bowl, you're going to hear Marcus Williams is going for surgery.
Right.
But they don't have anybody that does what Hamilton does.
Nope.
Marcus could be out, and you had Stone can sort of take his spot. Stone can't take Hamilton's spot. He's too unique of a player, and over. So I think it's going to take multiple guys if he has to miss. I'm hoping, like they said, you never know with the Ravens and injuries and who's telling the truth and not telling the truth. But if it's a grade 1 sprain, like they said it is, he has a chance to play. This week, we'll see. Friday will be the key day. Don't nobody panic about Wednesday or Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And, those days don't matter anymore when it comes to injuries. It's Friday. If he could get at least a limited session in on Friday, then he's got a decent chance to play this week. And look, I would love to see him play this week. I think it's a very winnable game for the Ravens. The Jaguars have really struggled defensively over the past couple weeks, especially in the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's something that the Ravens can exploit. I think that they can, hopefully the pass rush, you can bring that, to the table on a guy in Lawrence who is usually mobile, but he's not as mobile as he was. He's got a sprain of some sort. Medical magic this week that he was able to get through the game. But you can see he wasn't as elusive as he had been in previous weeks. Obviously, he didn't get the yards on the ground that he had gotten the previous weeks. So they're going to try to protect him, and it'd be a nice day to see the outside guys, to see Clowney come back and have another big game, and see Owe, get some pressure on the quarterback, and Van Noy continue that. We didn't really see a whole bunch of that this past week, and that's partially that's the Rams being a good team. That's partially Stafford being one of the quicker releases of the football in the NFL,
Mm-hmm.
And guys that know how to get open, and the ball is actually gone before they're out of their break. But we need some more pressure on the quarterback. I know interior for the Ravens, that's where they've really done great stuff. It's going to cost them a player. It's either going to cost them a lot of money, or they're going to get a draft pick out of it, because 11 sacks is 11 sacks. And, that's what the Ravens have always done. They've always found these guys that in their walk year, they have great years, and they have to make a decision. So, but yeah, I think Jacksonville is a team that they can beat. I think if the offense continues to put up 30 points, I think they win the game. I think the defense will bounce back and not play as poorly as they did this past week. That's been an aberration this year.
Yeah.
So, hopefully everybody's healthy, and hopefully they can, play another good game and put some distance possibly between them and some of the teams that are chasing them.
Yeah, and I think the Ravens have a good shot. This is going to be one of those weeks, especially where I think the Dolphins have a tougher schedule than people realize, and the Ravens need this win. I think they need to get this win and then maybe another win definitely a Dolphins win to have a shot at that 1 seed.
Yeah. I mean, everybody. You looked at the Ravens schedule, and it was it's really difficult. But you expected all those teams, the Dolphins, the Jaguars, to an extent, to win some of the games they've been losing. That on paper, I mean, weren't as difficult as what the Ravens were playing. And the fact that they lost those games is now, to the level of like, well, yes, the Ravens always controlled their own destiny because of who they had on the schedule, but now they have some breathing room and they control their own destiny.
Exactly.
People are starting to talk about, well, do you really want them to have the 1 seed after some people are saying they were rusty off of this extended break, the whole thing. Do you just want them, if they go, 3-1 in the next 4 and they're playing really, really well at a high level, do you really want them to have that week off to rest while everybody else is playing? It's like, if they keep on getting certain players banged up, I do.
Yeah.
So I get it, but they're playing really, really well. And we haven't even talked about Lamar and how well he played this past week. I mean, I get it. The deep ball, they keep on trying it. It's a work in progress, but he played really, really well. And the touchdown to Zay, I mean, on 3rd and 16, I mean, that's a great throw.
Yeah.
That's just a great throw and a great read from your quarterback. I'm looking for a guy that we've been waiting to make that type of play because we see the talent, and it was fantastic to see, especially, it answered questions. Could they come back? They hadn't trailed a whole lot this year. Could they come back? Could Lamar lead them down a drive where you had to score? Well, they answered those questions, and yes, they can, and yes, he did.
All right. Well, Ken, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I'm very excited that the Ravens were able to get that victory in stellar fashion, because last year I was just sleeping throughout the whole Greg Roman era. So fun times in Baltimore for sure. Let the fans at home know where they can find your stuff.
You can find me at the pages of Pressbox. My rankings for fantasy football are still there every single week. Also on FantasyPros, and if you do that new threads thing, you can find me there as well.
Awesome. Yep, I'm there too now because Twitter's getting kind of old.
It's tough. It's a tough place sometimes. So made the move.
Yep. Well, thanks for joining us. When we get back, Ravens fans, we'll close out the show, talk about my predictions for the Jaguars game next on the Ravens Talk Podcast. Welcome back to the Ravens Talk Podcast. Again, we had Ken Zalis with FantasyPros and Pressbox on. Definitely a wealth of knowledge when it comes to Ravens stuff. We ran out of time. We couldn't get any fantasy football questions. Sorry, fantasy football fans, but we'll definitely have him on prior to the end of the season to get his thoughts on what we can do to get a possible win in our fantasy league. But yeah, he touched on a lot of things that I agree with. The Ravens have the keys. They have the keys to the ignition, baby. They are really ripe for an AFC 1 seed. And I know I talked about it with Rita a little bit, Rita Hubbard, and Ken as well. The possibility of possibly having a bye overshadows any possible rust, in my opinion, that can occur. Now, again, the Orioles game scared the crap out of me. I mean, the Orioles game, the Orioles season, they had the number 1 seed. They got a bye, and they were so rusty out of the gate. But they're a young team. The Ravens seem hungry. They seem like they really want this. And I think that's really the difference between this season and previous seasons. I think the addition of Odell Beckham, some veteran leadership like Roquan Smith, this team looks hungry for a Super Bowl, and they're not going to be stopped. And Ken made a great point about the defense. I know they didn't perform as well as many would have hoped against the Rams, but that's just going to poke the bear. I think Mike McDonald's going to have this defensive unit ready. I'm sure Mama Humphrey, the social media guru that he is, he's going to hear all the chatter about how he believes that he's lost a step. They're going to come out firing all cylinders against this Jaguars team, who has a hobbled quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. Now, I looked at the tape. Trevor Lawrence, even though he was hobbled, he was slow, he still made some excellent decisions with the football. The defense is lackluster, and as the past couple of weeks have shown, the pass rush, still dangerous, but losing its teeth a little bit. So the Ravens have a chance to really make an impact in this game. If you're asking me if I think the Ravens are going to win, obviously I do. I think the Ravens are going to win against the Jaguars on Sunday Night Football. The Ravens in primetime go very well together. This could be bad for the Jaguars. I don't know. My gut tells me it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be maybe a 10 to 14 point win for the Ravens. But based on the way the Ravens have been acting, my heart of hearts, my brain, everything that I look at, the tape says the Ravens should blow out the Jaguars. Let me just not tiptoe around any further. The tape says the Ravens should blow out the Jaguars. I'm not talking 14 points, maybe 17 or 21 points. That's where my head's going at, but it just doesn't seem like the Ravens have that in them to do right now. I think they're really close. Keep it close with the run game and maybe pop off a few throws here and there type of team. But man, the tape shows some very, very juicy deficiencies that the Ravens coaching staff can take advantage of. So I would not be surprised if the Ravens win by 21 points, 17-21 on Sunday Night Football, and cement themselves for all those pundits out there who think the Ravens aren't the number one team in the AFC. Yeah, the Ravens are the best team in the AFC, and they're going to show it this week. How much they win by? My gut tells me 10 points, 10 to 14, but what I've seen on tape, if I was a coach, 17 to 21 point victory. In fact, let's just call it how we see it. 17 to 21 point win, Ravens over the Jaguars, setting up a huge Christmas night game, I should say, against the San Francisco 49ers. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Ravens Talk Podcast. I appreciate you guys immensely for all of your help and passion. And I have messages coming from social media on an almost daily basis from fans who appreciate the show, who just are finding out about the show because of my social media presence and really taking a liking to it. I can't thank you enough. It's been a great, great season. Very impressed. I did not think this show would blow up the way it has, especially at a short time. So definitely appreciate it. If you guys haven't already, follow me on YouTube. I want to give back to the community. The Ravens are definitely going to make the playoffs, and I think I might be giving away some playoff tickets, but you have to be subscribed to my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel's looking a little lackluster, so my true core fans who are following me on YouTube as well as Instagram are going to have a chance to probably win those tickets. More to come on that for sure. But again, thank you so much for joining us. Ravens versus Jaguars, Week 15. The Ravens could move to 11-3 and separate themselves immensely from the rest of the pack. Huge showdown next week. We'll talk all about it. See you next week.